I am walking through Rome with my heart on a string. It was an accident because I was actually on my way to Los Angeles, and I had taken a flight to Dublin, and it was a terrible flight. It was so I couldn't get onto the next long flight, so I just took a short flight. Ridiculous. Solves nothing, of course, but so I just came to Rome and I sank into Rome, and it just whooshed me. People here still seem to, they have some freedom, and they are very self-possessed and very stylish, and they are outside always. So they live outside, and they have a joy of life. In LA, it's very controlled. Everything is very regimented, and people move around in a very regimented way. Whereas here, it's very idle and very spontaneous. There's something within the people that is very modern. They're very unleashed, and they are very much into developing themselves and making the best of how they look, always. Well, in the past, I think I was very narrow-minded. I think I was very closed, and I believed that England was the best place on the planet. And I would travel around Europe, and I would never be interested. But that was my state, that was my frame of mind. I was very, very closed. And I'm very embarrassed now because I was so blinkered. So in recent times I've changed, I've expanded, like everybody changes, and some people expand, some people don't. But when I came here over a year ago, it was almost like the very first time coming to this city, and the splendor, the humor and the beauty I found mesmerizing. But admittedly, on previous visits I didn't see it because I was just so inward. It was only on coming here and walking around the streets and walking around the areas where he made his famous films, and the flavour and the understanding of what he was doing and why he was doing it was like discovering poetry for me. The English roots I have are inescapable. For better, for worse, they're inescapable. It is like being born Catholic. You carry it with you forever. There's not really much you can do about it if you want to. So I'm still principally English, of course, but I can't stand Tony Blair, and I can't stand his government, and so I'm keeping away. I prefer today because regardless of what you might think or regardless of what anybody might say, the level of interest now is stronger than ever before. People always seem to refer to the Smiths period as a golden period, but compared to now, people are more interested. And so I'm very comfortable with Ringleader of the Tormentors, and I think to me it's so exciting now, whereas it wasn't necessarily in the past. I had imagined that it would be more so tranquil and genteel. That's the way I was feeling. I was feeling very wistful and very slightly wearisome. But when all the Italian components fell together and the new songs came together, and mostly in this city, then it developed itself as being very strong and confrontational, and we used more instrumentation. So the songs, there seems to be a lot more happening in the songs. And Tony Visconti, of course, is a genius and embellished everything beautifully. And of course he's of Italian stock himself, so the fact that he became involved is also a fascinating part of the jigsaw. Johnny Marr and I had met him in the mid-80s to ask him to produce The Queen is Dead, and unfortunately he's passed. He said no, and but then he was almost going to produce a Your Arsenal album in the early 90s, my album, and it didn't happen. So he has always been a looming figure, and so when we heard that he was free and he was willing to come here, immediately I was so pleased, very pleased. Jesse is sort of Texan, Mexican Texan by birth, and Mexicans will say Tobias, Texans will say Tobias. So take your pick. He has a very strong sense of pop melody, but his playing is very guttural and very deep. And so the fusion of the deepness and the pop melody I thought was enchanting, because I feel that I should be categorised as pop, but I'm not sure really. His participation was very accidental, and he was due to come to the studio, and often when he comes to the studio, people will try and entice him in to join in, but he would never be interested. And the people at the studio said, forget it. He has refused everybody on the planet. He says, no. Every conceivable big name that you can think of, he has. So we passed him a song, and he said, yes. And then he brought in his 36-piece orchestra, and he was completely locked into his maestro, which was fascinating to watch.
Sex, Drugs and Rock and Roll is a trilogy, is a basic trilogy. You took one of the three bases of this trilogy and completely forgot about the two other ones. Why did you put them aside, away?
Well, I didn't really forget about them. I just sidestepped them, but I always knew they were there. But I don't know. I don't know why. I was simply suddenly doing this and in this life, and I don't really know how it happened, because as I had previously said, it shouldn't really have happened. I was a very introverted person, and introverted people didn't seem to belong in pop rock music. So the fact that I ended up was peculiar. It is really as if it's a demand. It's not particularly a personal decision. Most people fantasize about singing or playing or being on the television, but I was equally sure that people like me couldn't make it, because I saw no evidence of it. Everybody in pop music was very brash and very sure of themselves and very sexy and aggressive, and I was the opposite to all of those things. But of course I'm not now. I always thought I was a very glamorous person, which is odd because I wasn't, but I thought I was, and that's more important than being glamorous. So I willed myself into existence, and previous to that moment I didn't exist.
I can't ever understand.
Many people said impossible, because David Johansen will never become involved again. He's left it, he doesn't want to know. And I telephoned him at his house, and he was very interested. And he just said, I'd never thought about it before. Let's see if we can pull everything together. And Arthur and Sylvain were convinced that David would never be interested. And as always, since the split, as with all groups, people say bad things about each other. And they had all done that. But piecing it together, bringing them to London, doing the 2 concerts at the Royal Festival Hall, and then going elsewhere, was, for me, mesmerising. And it was also mesmerising for me because they were so good, and people liked them so much. The very first concert in London, the tickets just disappeared immediately. And I don't think David and Sylvain and Arthur thought anybody would go. Or I think they thought it would be a small, sweaty, marquee type club. So they were very, very moved by the whole thing. The situation needs me. And honestly, I've never made plans. I don't make plans. And I have no idea where I'll be in 2 weeks' time. I have no idea where I'll be this time next year. So, and I envy people who make plans with their lives and say, oh, well, I will marry, I will have 7 children, I will do this. I find it fascinating. I cannot make plans. I have no idea where I'll be, which is a good feeling mostly, and a queasy feeling occasionally, because we're all creatures of habit and we all like to sink into our own favourite chair.
Please stand up and defend me in the future when all's well. Confront what you are afraid.
A long time has passed, and if I was still the same, if I was still locked in the same mentality, then I'd be in terrible trouble. But time has passed, and these are good times for me. These are much better days. They couldn't be worse.
And does it mean that all this unhappiness is really behind? Is something?
Of course it doesn't. Of course not. What do you think I am? I am human.